Good evening. I'm Lamek Dire, and I'm going to take you through components of photovoltaic systems. So the objective of our lesson is, at the end of the lesson, the trainee should be able to identify the components of solar photovoltaic system, explain the operation of each component of solar photovoltaic system, and finally draw the schematic diagram of standalone solar photovoltaic system. So components of solar photovoltaic systems are: number one, you have got PV array; two, charge controller; three, solar battery; four, the inverter; and finally balance of system components. So the functions of solar PV system components, we start with the PV array. So the photovoltaic array is responsible for conversion of solar energy to electricity, and the fundamental conversion unit are the solar cells, which typically produce less than 2 watts of power. So in order to produce increased power output, the solar cells are normally connected in series and parallel to form modules, and the modules are again connected in series and parallel architecture to form an array so as to meet the desired power requirement. The second component is the charge controller, and the charge controller coordinates the power flow between the components of the system and the load, and ensures that the system voltage is regulated to a specified range. So the basic function of a charge controller is to prevent the solar battery from being overcharged and being over discharged. The third component is the storage battery, and the storage battery are used to supply the load during non-sunshine hours, whilst being charged by the PV array during period of high solar radiation. So the recommended batteries that should be used in standalone photovoltaic systems are the deep cycle batteries, because of their high performance. Our fourth component is the inverter, and an inverter is essential for meeting the load requirement. The inverter converts the power from the PV array in DC form to AC if the load requires an alternating current supply. Then finally, we have got balance of system components, and these components include protective devices, blocking and bypass diodes, lightning protection, and cabling in general. So such components are necessary to keep the PV system safe and reliable. And finally, we have got the schematic diagram of a standalone PV system. So we have got the PV array, and the PV array basically it comprises of several modules brought together to form an array in order to get the substantial amount of power. Then from the PV array, it passes through the charge controller, which regulates the amount of charge going to the solar battery, and therefore prevents the battery from being overcharged or over discharged. The other component we have is the storage battery. Storage battery basically they are used for energy storage in absence of solar radiation, that is at night, or when the demand increases. So the storage battery are the ones which will supply the load with the required amount of energy. Then we have got an inverter. The inverter, that part is normally optional. So for inverter, it always converts the DC energy into AC source. So if you have no AC load, you don't require inverter. So that's why it's an optional component. So you only use it when you have got AC loads. And that marks the end of our lesson.